You know that feeling when you're lying in bed at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, your mind racing through everything you didn't do today? That project you promised yourself you'd start. That call you were supposed to make. That dream you keep pushing to tomorrow. And tomorrow. And tomorrow. We've been taught that the solution is motivation, discipline, willpower. We watch videos that pump us up. We make grand plans. We promise ourselves that Monday will be different. But by Tuesday afternoon, we're back where we started. Scrolling, avoiding, procrastinating. What if I told you that everything we've been taught about overcoming procrastination is backwards? What if the answer isn't to do more, but to do less? What if there's an ancient Japanese technique so simple, so counterintuitive, that most people dismiss it the moment they hear it? This isn't another productivity hack. This is a philosophy that has transformed millions of lives, rebuilt entire corporations, and helped people who had given up on themselves discover that change was always possible. They just needed to stop trying so hard. If you're tired of broken promises to yourself, if you're exhausted from the cycle of motivation and failure, stay with me. Because what you're about to discover will challenge everything you think you know about change. And if this resonates with you, subscribe to this channel. We explore the philosophies and systems that actually create lasting transformation, not just temporary inspiration. Comment below with one area of your life where procrastination has stolen your dreams. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Weight of Tomorrow. David Chen sat at his desk on a Wednesday afternoon in March, staring at a blank document that had been blank for 6 weeks. The cursor blinked at him, mocking him, waiting. He was 34 years old, and somewhere along the way, he had become a person he didn't recognize. The man who once had dreams. The man who once believed he would do something meaningful with his life. That man felt like a ghost now, a memory of someone who had slowly suffocated under the weight of tomorrow. His business proposal was due in 2 weeks. The proposal that could change everything. The one his mentor had helped him secure a meeting for. 6 months of networking, of building relationships, of finally getting a chance to present his idea to investors who could make it real. And he hadn't written a single word. Not because he didn't know what to write. He'd researched everything. He had 17 browser tabs open with articles and data. He had a folder with 43 documents of notes and statistics and brilliant ideas that came to him at 2 in the morning when he couldn't sleep because of the anxiety of not working on it during the day. He would start tomorrow. Really start. He'd wake up early. Make coffee. Sit down with focus and determination, and finally do this thing, just like he'd promised himself yesterday, and the day before, and every day for the past 6 weeks. David's wife Sarah knocked softly on the door. She didn't open it. She'd learned not to. "Dinner's ready," she said through the wood. "I'll be there in a minute. I'm in the middle of something." Silence. Then footsteps walking away. He wasn't in the middle of something. He was in the middle of nothing. He was drowning in a sea of nothing. And every day, the water rose higher. That night, David sat with Sarah and their 7-year-old daughter Emma at the dinner table. Emma talked about her day at school, about the drawing she made, about how her teacher said it was beautiful. She was so full of life, so unself-conscious, so free. David remembered being like that once. "Did you finish your project, Daddy?" Emma asked, her eyes bright with innocent faith that her father could do anything. "Almost, sweetheart, almost done." Sarah's eyes met his across the table. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. He saw it there. The disappointment, the worry, the slow erosion of trust. Not because she didn't love him, but because she'd heard almost so many times it had lost all meaning. After Emma went to bed, Sarah sat beside him on the couch. "David, I'm worried about you." "I know. I'm worried about me too. It's not just the proposal. It's everything. You keep saying you'll start exercising. You keep saying you'll spend more time with Emma. You keep saying you'll finish things, and then you don't, and I watch you hate yourself a little more each day." He wanted to defend himself, to explain that it wasn't that simple, that she didn't understand the paralysis, the way his mind would race with everything that needed to be perfect before he could start. But she was right, and that made it worse. "I don't know what's wrong with me," he said quietly. "Maybe nothing's wrong with you. Maybe you just need help." That night, David lay awake until 4 in the morning. Not working, not planning, just staring into the darkness, feeling the weight of every unfinished thing crushing down on him. Every promise broken, every potential wasted, every day that slipped by while he waited for the perfect moment to begin. "Tomorrow," he thought, "tomorrow I'll change everything." But deep down, beneath the promises and the hope, he didn't believe it anymore. Chapter 2. The Man in the Garden. The intervention came from an unexpected place. David's uncle, James, called him on Saturday morning. "I need help with something at my house. Can you come over?" David almost made an excuse. He had work to do. The proposal. But the proposal would still be there later. It was always there later. So, he went. James lived in a small house on the edge of town, with a garden that took up most of his property. David found him in the backyard, kneeling beside a raised bed of soil, planting something with methodical precision. "Thanks for coming," James said, not looking up. David handed it to him and watched as his uncle dug a small hole, placed a single seed, covered it with soil, and patted it down gently. Then he moved exactly 6 inches to the right and did it again. "This is what you needed help with? Planting seeds?" "No. I needed you here so we could talk. The seeds are just what I'm doing while we talk." David sat on the grass. "Sarah called you. She's worried." "I'm worried. Your mother's worried. Should we be worried?" "I don't know. Probably." James planted another seed, moved 6 inches, planted another. "Tell me about the proposal." "There's nothing to tell. I can't start it. I don't know why. I just can't." "When's it due?" 12 days. "And you've written nothing?" "Nothing." James nodded slowly. He planted another seed. "Do you know what this is?" he asked, gesturing to the bed. "Gardening? It's Kaizen. Do you know that word?" David shook his head. "It's Japanese. It means continuous improvement. Small, incremental change. After I retired, I was lost. Depressed. I had all this time, and I couldn't do anything with it. I'd make these huge plans. I was going to renovate the whole house, build an entire garden, write my memoirs, and then I'd do nothing because it all felt too big." He placed another seed in the ground. "Then I met a man at the community center, a Japanese gardener named Mr. Tanaka. He was 87 years old, and his garden was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I asked him how long it took him to create it. He said 50 years. 50 years of doing one small thing every single day." David watched his uncle's hands move with steady rhythm. Plant, cover, pat, move. "He taught me something that changed my life. He said, when you want to climb a mountain, you don't look at the summit. You look at your feet, and you take one step. Just one. Tomorrow, you take another step. And another. And one day, you look around and realize you're standing on top of the mountain." "That's nice," David said. "But I don't have 50 years. I have 12 days. "You're not listening. I'm not talking about the proposal. I'm talking about you. About why you can't start it." James finally looked at him. "You're trying to write the perfect proposal. You're trying to do it all at once. You're trying to make one enormous leap from where you are to where you want to be. And your brain looks at that leap and says, no. Too scary. Too big. Too much risk of failure. So it shuts down. It protects you by doing nothing. So, what am I supposed to do? Stop trying to write a proposal. Instead, tomorrow morning, I want you to do something so small, it feels stupid. I want you to write one sentence. Not a paragraph. Not a page. One sentence. Can you do that? That's ridiculous. One sentence won't accomplish anything. That's exactly why it will work. Your brain won't resist something that small. There's no pressure, no fear. It's just one sentence. David felt frustration rising. James, I appreciate the philosophy, but this isn't going to solve anything. I need to write 20 pages in 12 days. One sentence is meaningless. James smiled. Then prove me wrong. Tomorrow morning. Write one sentence. Just one. If it doesn't help, you've lost 30 seconds. But if I'm right, you might discover something about yourself you never knew. That night, David told Sarah about the conversation. One sentence, she said. That's his advice? I know, it's stupid. Is it? What's your plan been working so far? He didn't have an answer for that. The next morning, David sat at his desk. The blank document stared back at him. He took a breath and thought about James and his garden. Planting one seed at a time, he typed. This proposal outlines a sustainable solution for reducing urban food waste through community-based composting networks. One sentence, that was all. He looked at it, hated it, wanted to delete it and start over with something better. But he stopped himself. One sentence was the goal. He'd achieved the goal. He closed the laptop. Something strange happened. For the first time in 6 weeks, he didn't feel like a failure. He'd actually done the thing he said he would do. It was tiny. It was almost nothing. But it was real. Chapter 3. The Philosophy of Small Stones. David didn't tell anyone. But the next morning, he wrote another sentence. Just one. Then he closed the laptop and went to work. On Wednesday, James called. How's it going? I've written 3 sentences. Good. Don't write more than 1 per day. What? Why not? I'm finally making progress. Because we're not trying to finish the proposal yet. We're trying to build a new person. Someone who does what they say they'll do. Someone who doesn't procrastinate. You can't build that person by jumping back into old patterns. Trust the process. David found this infuriating. But he also noticed something. He wasn't dreading his desk anymore. He wasn't spending hours avoiding the work. He sat down, wrote his sentence, and moved on with his day. The proposal still terrified him, but the sentence didn't. On Saturday, James invited him back to the garden. There's something I want to show you. He led David to a stone path that wound through the plants. Each stone was perfectly placed, smooth and flat, creating a meditation walk through the garden. Do you know how long this path is? James asked. 20 feet? 22 feet. There are 67 stones. Do you know how long it took me to build this? A day? 1 year. I placed 1 stone every week. Sometimes I'd find the perfect stone on Monday and place it on Sunday. Sometimes I wouldn't find the right stone for 2 weeks. But I never placed more than 1 in a week. Why? Because Mr. Tanaka taught me about another principle. Murray. It means overburden. When you try to do too much too fast, you create resistance. Your mind and body rebel. You burn out. You quit. Kaizen only works when you protect yourself from Murray. He knelt and ran his hand over one of the stones. Americans think more is always better. Work harder. Do more. Push through. But the Japanese understood something deeper. Sustainable change comes from doing less, not more. From honoring your limits. From building so slowly that you never trigger the resistance that makes you quit. David looked at the path. Each stone placed with intention. Each week bringing him 1 stone closer to completion. Never rushing. Never overwhelming himself. How did you know you wouldn't quit? Because 1 stone is easy. 1 stone doesn't require motivation. It doesn't require discipline. It just requires showing up. And humans are very good at doing things that are easy when we do them consistently. That week, David started writing 2 sentences per day, then 3. He didn't plan to. It just happened naturally. The resistance was gone. He'd sit down, write 1 sentence, and think, I could write another. So he would. And another. By the end of the week, he'd written 30 sentences. He had momentum. But more importantly, he had something he hadn't felt in years. He had trust in himself. Chapter 4. The First Collapse. On the 9th day, David woke up with fire in his chest. He'd written 40 sentences. He could see the shape of the proposal now. He knew what it needed to be. He sat down at his desk at 7 in the morning with his coffee, and he started writing. Not one sentence, not 3. He wrote for 4 hours straight. He wrote 7 pages. He poured everything into it, all the ideas he'd been holding, all the research he'd compiled. He was possessed by the flow state people always talked about, and it felt incredible. By noon, he'd written 12 pages, over halfway done. He was going to finish early. He was going to prove that he could do this, that he wasn't broken, that he was still the person who could accomplish big things. He took a break for lunch, feeling like a champion. When he sat back down at 2 in the afternoon, the cursor blinked at him. He read what he'd written. It was garbage. Disorganized. Repetitive. Unfocused. He'd tried to include everything, and ended up with nothing coherent. He'd need to rewrite most of it. Hours of work, wasted. The familiar paralysis crept back in. His chest tightened. His hands felt heavy. The voice in his head started its familiar loop. See? You can't do this. You never could. You're a fraud. You're a failure. You should give up now, before you embarrass yourself. He closed the laptop and walked away. For 2 days, he didn't open it. The deadline was 5 days away. He'd made progress, then destroyed it. He was worse off than when he started. On the 3rd day, James showed up at his door. Sarah called me. She said you stopped working. I failed. I tried to do it your way, and then I ruined it. Come with me. They drove to James's house in silence. In the garden, James led him to a section where several plants had withered and died. Do you see this? James asked. You killed your plants? No. I planted them wrong. I gave them too much water because I was impatient for them to grow. I smothered them with my enthusiasm. So they died. He knelt beside the dead plants. This is shippai, another Japanese word. It means failure. But in Japanese culture, shippai isn't something to avoid. It's something to expect. It's information. These plants taught me that I need to water less. They taught me patience. Their death made me a better gardener. So I was supposed to fail? You weren't supposed to do anything. You did what humans do. You got excited. You pushed too hard. You triggered Muri, the overburden. And now, you feel like quitting. That's normal. That's the pattern. But here's what Mr. Tanaka taught me about shippai. It's not the failure that defines you. It's what you do the day after the failure. James stood up. The proposal is in 5 days. You have 2 choices. You can quit, which proves to yourself that you're someone who quits, or you can go home, delete those 12 pages, and write 1 sentence. Just 1. Tomorrow, write 1 more. You won't finish the proposal on time. You'll probably have to ask for an extension. But you'll learn something much more valuable. You'll learn that you're someone who gets back up. David felt tears burning behind his eyes. I'm so tired of failing. Then stop treating failure like the end. Start treating it like the middle. The middle is where all the real work happens. That evening, David opened his laptop. He looked at the 12 pages of confused writing, and he deleted all of it. Then he wrote 1 sentence. The current urban waste management system is broken, and communities are ready for a better solution. He closed the laptop and went to have dinner with his family. Chapter 5. The Identity Shift. David called the investors and asked for an extension. 2 weeks. They gave him 1 week. He didn't panic. He wrote 1 sentence every morning. Sometimes 2. Sometimes 5. But he never pushed. Never forced. He listened to his resistance, and when it appeared, he stopped. Something was happening inside him that had nothing to do with the proposal. He was changing at a fundamental level. He wasn't motivated anymore. Motivation was an emotion, and emotions were unreliable. Instead, he was becoming someone different. He was becoming someone who did the work. James invited him to the garden on the third day of his extension week. They sat on a bench overlooking the stone path, and James handed him a cup of tea. "There's a word I haven't taught you yet," James said. Ikigai. It means your reason for being. The thing that makes you want to get up in the morning. I thought this was about productivity, not philosophy. They're the same thing. You can't solve procrastination with systems. You can only solve it by understanding why you procrastinate. And the reason is always the same. You've lost connection to your ikigai. David sipped the tea. It was bitter and warm. "Why are you writing this proposal?" James asked. "Because I need to. For the business." "That's not ikigai. That's obligation. Why do you actually want this business to exist?" David was quiet for a long time. "When I was Emma's age, my father worked all the time, 70, 80 hours a week. We had everything we needed except him. And when I was 12, he had a heart attack. Survived, but he was never the same. He'd sacrificed his life for a job that replaced him within 3 months." He set down the tea. "I want to build something that matters. Something that helps people, but also something that doesn't consume me. I want to be present for Emma. I want her to know her father, not as an idea, but as a real person who shows up." "There it is," James said softly. "That's ikigai. The business isn't the point. Being the father you needed is the point. The business is just the vehicle." "But how does that help me finish the proposal?" "Because when you're connected to ikigai, you don't procrastinate. You don't avoid the work. The work becomes an expression of who you are. You're not writing a proposal. You're building the life you want for your daughter. See the difference?" David did see it. For the first time, he understood why the blank page had terrified him. He'd been treating it like a test he could fail. But it wasn't a test. It was a step toward becoming the person he wanted to be. That night, he didn't write one sentence. He wrote for an hour, and it flowed easily because he wasn't writing a business proposal anymore. He was writing a love letter to his future, to the man he was becoming, to the life he was building for Emma. Chapter 6. The Proof of Change. David submitted the proposal 2 days before the extended deadline. It was 12 pages. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was his, and he was proud of it. The investors read it. They asked questions. They deliberated. 3 weeks later, they said yes. Not to everything he'd proposed, but to a pilot program. A start. A seed planted. But that wasn't the change that mattered. The change that mattered happened on a Tuesday evening when Emma asked him to help her with a school project. She needed to build a model of the solar system. It was due in 2 weeks. The old David would have said yes and then avoided it until the night before, creating stress and chaos and teaching his daughter that deadlines were something to fear. But the new David said yes and immediately asked, "What's one thing we can do today to start?" They cut out a circle for the sun. That was all. 5 minutes of work. The next day, they painted it yellow. 5 minutes. Every day, one small task. Emma never felt overwhelmed. She never procrastinated. And when she brought the finished project to school, she beamed with pride because she'd done it herself, one piece at a time. Sarah noticed. She didn't say anything at first, but David felt the shift. The way she looked at him. The trust returning. The warmth coming back into their marriage. One night, she curled up beside him on the couch and said, "You're different." "I know." "What changed?" "I stopped trying to be a different person and started becoming one." She kissed his cheek. "I'm proud of you." Those 4 words meant more than the investor approval. More than any success he could achieve. Because they meant he was becoming the man he wanted to be. James came over for dinner the following Saturday. Emma showed him her solar system project, and he admired each planet with genuine interest. After Emma went to bed, James and David sat in the backyard. "You did it," James said. "I almost didn't, but you did. That's what matters. Can I ask you something? Why did you help me? Why did you care so much?" James was quiet for a moment. "Because 30 years ago, I was you. I was drowning in procrastination, in broken promises, in self-hatred. And a stranger helped me. A Japanese gardener who saw something in me I couldn't see in myself. He taught me Kaizen. He saved my life. And before he died, he made me promise that I'd pass it on, that I'd help someone else the way he helped me. What was his name? Your gardener? Mr. Tanaka. He's been gone for 10 years now, but his garden still grows. And every person I teach, every life that changes, that's him still planting seeds. David felt the weight of that. The ripple effect of one man's kindness spreading across decades, across lives, across generations. Thank you, David said. Don't thank me. Live it, teach it, pass it on. Chapter 7. The Complete System. 6 months later, David's pilot program was running. It was small, just 3 neighborhoods. But it was working. People were composting. Waste was decreasing. The model was proving itself. But more than that, David was working differently. He'd built his entire business using Kaizen principles. Instead of trying to scale rapidly and burn out, he improved by 1% every day. He hired slowly. He tested carefully. He built sustainable systems that didn't require him to work 80-hour weeks. He created a framework he called the 5 Stones of Kaizen, based on everything James and Mr. Tanaka had taught him. The first stone was small steps. Never try to change everything at once. Identify one tiny action you can take today. So small, it feels almost meaningless. Do only that. Tomorrow, do it again. The goal is consistency, not intensity. The second stone was no overburden. Murray destroys progress. When you feel resistance, you're pushing too hard. Reduce the effort until the resistance disappears. Trust that small actions compound over time. Protect yourself from burnout by honoring your limits. The third stone was embrace failure. Shipai is information, not judgment. When you fail, you're learning what doesn't work. The only true failure is quitting. Everything else is just feedback. What you do the day after failure determines who you become. The fourth stone was identity over outcomes. Stop focusing on what you want to achieve. Start focusing on who you want to become. You're not writing a book. You're becoming a writer. You're not trying to get healthy. You're becoming a healthy person. When your identity shifts, your actions follow naturally. The fifth stone was find your reason. Ikigai is your anchor. When you know why you're doing something, when it connects to your deepest purpose, procrastination disappears. You're not avoiding work. You're expressing who you are. The work becomes an act of love. David taught these principles to his small team. He taught them to Sarah, who used them to finally start the photography business she'd dreamed about for years. He taught them to his sister, who'd been trying to write a novel for a decade. Each person found their own path. Each person planted their own seeds. But the philosophy was the same. Small steps, continuous improvement, patience, trust in the process. Chapter 8. The Long Transformation. 3 years passed. David's composting program had expanded to 40 neighborhoods. He'd hired 15 employees. He'd been featured in the local newspaper and was consulting with 2 other cities interested in replicating his model. But the real transformation wasn't in the business metrics. It was in the man he'd become. He worked 4 days a week. The 5th day, he spent with Emma. They had traditions now. Friday morning pancakes. Afternoon walks. Board games after dinner. She knew her father, not as a stressed, absent figure, but as a present, engaged parent who showed up. His marriage with Sarah had deepened. They'd started a practice of writing one thing they appreciated about each other every day. Just one thing. 3 years of daily appreciations had created a foundation of gratitude and love that felt unshakable. He exercised now, not obsessively, just 20 minutes every morning. For 3 years, he'd never missed a day, not because he was disciplined, but because he was someone who exercised. It was part of his identity. He read for 15 minutes before bed. In 3 years, he'd finished 67 books. He'd never been a reader before, but 15 minutes was so small he never resisted it, and 15 minutes every day for 3 years added up to something beautiful. James's garden had grown too. Together, they'd added a pond, a meditation area, a vegetable garden that produced food for both their families. Every Saturday, they worked together for 1 hour. Just 1 hour. But in 3 years, those hours had created something remarkable. One Saturday in autumn, as they sat beside the pond watching dragonflies dance across the water, James said, "Do you remember the first day you came here? When you couldn't write a single sentence? I remember feeling broken. Do you still feel broken?" David thought about that. About the man he'd been and the man he'd become. "No, I feel like I found something I'd lost, or maybe something I never had." "What's that?" "Trust. In myself. In the process. In the belief that I can change." James smiled. "That's Kaizen. That's the whole thing. Not the productivity. Not the accomplishment. The trust. The knowledge that you're becoming someone new. One small step at a time. And that person is worth becoming." Chapter 9. The Legacy. 5 years after that first desperate morning, when David couldn't write a single sentence, he gave a talk at the community center. They were all struggling with procrastination, with broken promises, with the weight of unfinished dreams. He told them his story. He told them about the blank page and the paralysis and the shame. He told them about James and Mr. Tanaka and the garden and the seeds. He told them about the 5 stones of Kaizen. After the talk, a young woman approached him. She was crying. "Thank you," she said. "I've been trying to finish my master's thesis for 2 years. I'm drowning. I don't know how to start." David remembered that feeling. The drowning, the paralysis. "Tomorrow morning," he said, "I want you to write 1 sentence. Not a paragraph. Not a page. Just 1 sentence. Can you do that?" "That won't be enough." "It'll be exactly enough. Because you're not trying to finish the thesis tomorrow. You're trying to become someone who keeps promises to herself. Start there." She nodded. Still crying. Still lost. But maybe, just maybe, holding on to a thread of hope, David thought about Mr. Tanaka, who he'd never met but who had changed his life through James. He thought about how one man's kindness had rippled forward through decades, touching people who would never know his name but would carry his wisdom. That night, David sat with Emma, who was now 12 years old, helping her with a project about climate change. "Dad," she said, "how do we fix something this big?" "It feels impossible," he smiled. "Do you remember when we built your solar system project? When you were 7? Yeah, we did 1 piece at a time. That's how we fix big problems, 1 piece at a time. You can't fix climate change by yourself, but you can take 1 small action, and then another. And if everyone takes 1 small action, all those actions add up to something bigger than any of us could do alone." She thought about that. "So, I just need to find my 1 small thing?" "Exactly. What's 1 thing you could do this week?" "I could start a recycling program at school." "Perfect. What's 1 thing you could do tomorrow to start that?" "I could talk to my teacher." "There you go. 1 step. Just 1. That's all you ever need." Emma smiled and went back to her project. And David watched her work with the same patient focus he'd learned from James, who'd learned it from Mr. Tanaka. 3 generations of wisdom, passed down through stories and gardens, and the simple act of showing someone that change was possible. Later that week, David received a message from the young woman who'd approached him after his talk. She'd written 1 sentence of her thesis. Just 1. But it was a beginning. And beginnings, no matter how small, were everything. Chapter 10. Your 1 step. Right now, you're at a crossroads. You've heard the story. You understand the philosophy. You know that Kaizen, this practice of continuous, small improvement, has transformed lives. But knowledge isn't transformation. Understanding isn't change. The question is, what are you going to do with this? You have something in your life right now that you've been procrastinating on. Maybe it's a project at work. Maybe it's a creative dream you've pushed aside. Maybe it's your health, your relationships, your personal growth. Whatever it is, you've been trying to climb the entire mountain in one leap, and your brain has been protecting you by keeping you frozen at the bottom. Here's the truth. You don't need motivation. You don't need discipline. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to identify one tiny step, so small it feels ridiculous. So easy you can't say no. Not tomorrow. Today. Right now. After you finish watching this, what's the one sentence you need to write? The one email you need to send? The 1 minute of exercise? The one page you need to read? The one drawer you need to organize? What's the smallest possible action that moves you 1 inch closer to who you want to become? Do that. Only that. And tomorrow, do it again. Because here's what I've learned. Transformation doesn't happen in the big moments. It happens in the small ones. In the daily choice to show up. In the quiet decision to keep going when no one's watching. In the one sentence written when you feel like writing zero. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not a failure. You're someone who's been trying to do too much, and your brain has been trying to protect you. But protection has become a prison, and the door has always been unlocked. You just needed permission to take the smallest step through it. This is that permission. Think about David, staring at that blank page for 6 weeks, drowning in his own expectations. Think about how one sentence changed everything. Not because the sentence was brilliant, but because it proved to him that he could do what he said he would do. That's the real transformation, not the achievement, the trust. Think about Mr. Tanaka, planting his garden for 50 years. 50 years of small actions that created something so beautiful it inspired James, who inspired David, who inspired that young woman, who will inspire someone else. That's the legacy of Kaizen. Not what you accomplish, but who you become and who you help others become. So, I want you to do something right now. In the comments below, write down one tiny action you're going to take today. Not a big goal, not a life plan. Just one small step. Make it so small you can't fail. Make it so easy you have no excuse. Write it down, commit to it publicly, and then do it. And tomorrow, come back and tell me you did it. And we'll talk about the next small step, because that's how mountains are climbed. That's how lives are transformed. That's how you become the person you've always known you could be. One tiny step at a time. One day at a time. One sentence at a time. The Japanese have been teaching this for centuries. Mr. Tanaka taught James. James taught David. David taught that young woman at the community center. And now, I'm teaching you. This is the ripple. This is the legacy. This is how wisdom spreads and lives change and impossible things become possible. Your one step is waiting for you. It's been waiting for you all along. And it's so small, so simple, so achievable, that the only question left is, will you take it? The rest of your life begins with one tiny action. What will it be? And remember this, 5 years from now, you'll either look back at this moment as the day everything changed, or as another day you let slip by. The difference between those two futures isn't talent or luck or circumstance. It's one small step, taken today, right now, by you. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for tomorrow. The person you want to become is built in moments like this. When you choose action over hesitation. When you choose trust over fear. When you choose one small step over standing still. This is your moment. Take it.